Game 2 of Infused versus Exertus.
Hello, welcome back to the Caster Desk. I'm Joe Munchballs-Fenny, and joining me once again is Kiernan X-Scoundrel. We're ready to get the second game of this series underway. Now, it was said beforehand that if Exertus, they kind of needed to win the first game to get that momentum going. Now, with kind of how specific the strategy was from Infused in that first game, do you think that this maybe could be a loss that could be rectified in picks and bans?
Yeah, I mean, I think the analysts were pretty heavy towards Infused taking this. And in my honest opinion, I think Infused are likely to take this next game, but it's not unrectifiable by the guys from Exertus. They definitely have the potential in their pick and ban strategy to try and bring something out that can deal with this Infused lineup. Now, I said in the Infused lineup, you gave Charlie T Echo, you gave Fiora to Alphari, you gave Max Lord Mundo, which is a very, very popular and strong jungle pick right now, and then you had basically an incredibly safe hyper carry with that Tahm Kench in the bot lane. You're giving almost a perfect triple threat composition here to Infused, and like I said, they picked a composition that I think we're more looking for picks as looking for 5v5 team fights, but as soon as the
as soon as it really kicked off, that was when Exertus felt like they had to just play reactively to whatever Infused wanted to do. They were playing to the beat that Infused were drumming. But I think one of the key differences between the two teams, it was in that mid lane. Charlie T up against Alchemist. And we saw, just in the fact that it was a Veigar pick up against the Echo, Veigar is a champion that takes so long to scale up. And they didn't really have the composition elsewhere to make up for the fact that the mid lane was going to take a long time to scale.
Well, obviously, Brixton, our resident analyst in the mid lane right here, he did talk about that matchup quite specifically on the analyst desk. He said that Echo kind of does the same thing against every other mid lane champion, and there was the room for the outplay from DX Alchemist. He just didn't, he had to make no mistakes. Charlie T is so good at exploiting mistakes, that's how he gets ahead, especially on a champion like Echo. Alchemist, he is known for making no mistakes. Like, Alchemist is just known for being the guy who sits way back, he farms a storm, in the late game comes out and makes picks on champions like Lux and Veigar, and then wins through forcing some sort of 4v5 scenario with his team. Well, Charlie T, 1 foot out of line by DX Alchemist, and Charlie T was on him like a pack of hungry bears. Under that turret, he jumped through, had his team support with him, he locked him up under his own turret, mind you, with that parallel convergence, and then they managed to turn that into a favorable situation for themselves.
Yep, absolutely. So we are going to be kicking this game off in just a second. We did have to restart the lobby, but picks and bans is literally about to begin. So what do these guys need to change up coming into this pick and ban? What do they need to change to get themselves back on the board here?
I like the fact that the Exertus lineup went for the Tristana, because I think she is such a strong AD carry, but the composition that they picked around the Tristana didn't actually make that much sense. You know, you pick Tristana to go in for fast tower pushing. You're looking to take as many towers as possible. You catch people off guard. You have a 1-2 second advantage in a rotation, and you can get a huge chunk of damage down onto a tower with explosive shot. They didn't really have anything else to benefit the siege. Yes, they had Alchemist, but he wasn't really in a position to do much aside from try and farm up a little bit. If they had Lux, I think that actually may have been better, because Alchemist is pretty famed for his Lux. It was something that he picked last 4 Nations, has picked consistently throughout.
I mean, like every UK land he's played.
Yeah, every UK land, like, he's played that Lux. He could have just used things like Lucent Singularity to try and ward people away from turrets, try and catch people out with a light binding, which is, in my opinion, a little bit easier to hit than the event horizon from Veigar, just in picking a singular person off, because that's what Alchemist has always been fantastic at. He will pick someone off unaware, and then he'll blow them up, and then the rest of the team will try and capitalize on that advantage that he's provided for them. And Tristana is the perfect AD carry to do that. Now, Exertus had a really strong early game in the sense that they didn't get behind to Infused, because we are so used to seeing Infused steamroll out of the start of the game and just snowball out of control. They actually, for about 15-17 minutes, which is probably considering going towards mid-game in the 5.23 patch, they were getting pretty even. They managed to keep things toe-to-toe with, you know, the best team in the UK right now by all, all means and margins.
By all statistics right now, because they are 15-0. But let's take a look at the picks and bans that we have going on. It is going to be Infused over on our red side this time. We'll get that overlay updated for you guys momentarily. Well, Exertus going to be banning out the Lee Sin, interestingly, so denying that from Max Law, and in fact Rek'Sai as well, so 2 target bans at Max Law, and then Soraka. So Tahm Kench available. Do you think Exertus are going to pick this one first?
Wiz has played Tahm Kench, you know, and we know that he has it in his arsenal. Wiz has been historically known in the UK Premiership for Thresh, Braum, and Morgana, but we know that he can play something like Tahm Kench. It's just whether he feels comfortable enough to do so. Brandon could play Tahm Kench into that top lane, but I feel that that's not going to be aggressive enough or able to deal with himself in a solo lane well enough to deal with Alfari. I don't think there's enough room for outplay with Tahm Kench. It does look like they're going to potentially prioritize their jungler on that Zac again. My only issue with the Zac is you play right into an Echo mid's hands once again, because you're looking to engage right on top of the enemy team to deal as much damage as possible. Like we said before, that parallel convergence comes down because you know with a Zac that they are going to try and jump on you. You're very unlikely to have the Zac looking for the disengage, or unlikely, you know, him looking to be defensive with that elastic slingshot. So you know that he's going to jump on top of you. So you can know that your parallel convergence can be used as a defensive tool, which makes it all the more effective against when your front line is running straight at you. And they have given over the Tristana and Tahm Kench in the first rotation here for Infused.
This is... I've got to be honest, I would have prioritized the Tahm Kench here or banned it out. Like one of the two. I don't feel like Lee Sin was necessarily that.
Oh, the thing is that you ban Lee Sin against Max Law because it's one of his most played champions, and he is so blinking good with him. You know, he's known across sort of Challenger EUS for just playing a really solid Lee Sin. They're going to go for Morgana, which almost... Now, I would say this will go to Wiz, because it is likely that it will go to Wiz, but we have seen Alchemist play mid lane Morgana, and Brixton is my resident friend mid laner, has played mid lane Morgana in the high elo levels, and he's done pretty well with it. It can't carry a game solo, but it's pretty decent against a lot of mid lane matchups just because of the way her kit works. She has that black shield, gets the magic damage resist, and it aids the sort of style of play that we've seen Exertus come out with. They go for the picks, they look for a dark binding into a pick, and then they look to snowball from that. You know, that's the way we've seen Exertus win classically in the ESL Premiership so far. They're really good at making picks because Wiz is such a good champion, Wiz is such a good player rather, with these kind of pick lane supports like Morgana, like Thresh, like Braum. This may be playing towards a more pick style composition, which we're used to seeing from Exertus, which is probably a little bit better. But like we see, Charlie T going to go straight onto that Echo, and it may be a Kindred here. I'm pretty sure in the last few weeks that we've seen Kindred available, it's been 100% ban rate or pick rate in the ESL Premiership.
I don't know if it's quite 100%. I can't quote the statistics exactly, but it has been seen a lot, and especially Nocturnal Plex when he was playing on Choke. We saw it, I think it was 2 games in a row, and he did phenomenally well on it. I mean, both games that he played it, I believe he was at least part of the first 4 kills of that game. I do just want to quickly touch back on the Morgana pick. I think it's interesting that Exertus have gone for a Morgana on the second rotation of picks when Tahm Kench is on the enemy team. You're kind of picking into a counter, surely.
Yeah, I do understand that and get that completely. Obviously, because once that Dark Binding goes down, Tahm Kench can just negate all CC onto the champion that is locked down and devour them. What is so interesting about this lineup from Exertus is they're going to stick Brandon on a safe top laner that can deal with a 2v1 in the form of a Malphite, and Alchemist going on to a time-old classic for himself in the form of the Xerath. Now, this composition, it has a lot of pick, but it also has a fairly decent team fight. But really, I'm thinking that they're going to be looking to poke and pick, you know.
Yeah.
And that sounds so weird when you say it out loud, but that's really what I imagine that they're going to be doing here. Then they've got the jinx of the tower pushing, but everything else is they're going to try and poke down with Xerath, and then they're going to look for the picks. Malphite doesn't need to be used for a 5-man ultimate. You can use Malphite for a 1-person ultimate if you're just looking to make that kind of pick. That is something that he can be used for. So if they combo this CC onto one person, instead of trying to go for a full 5v5, then maybe they'll have the edge in this, because you're looking at a composition here from Infused that is quite used to dealing with someone that wants to go and jump in for a 5-man ulti, because that parallel convergence can come just down, come straight down. You've got Brandon and Dan who are going to jump straight in there, and they'll jump straight in likely into a parallel convergence unless they can force Charlie T very early, either to get devoured by the Tam Kench or use his ultimate. You know, they're going to be playing into a similar sort of scenario than they had last game. So I'm really, really excited to see how they vary their game style. Yeah. I imagine, again, we're likely going to see a lane swap, but it's not quite as awful matchup for Alphari and Brandon this time round because it is Hecarim versus Malphite. Yeah. And Malphite can play safe and do well in a 1v1 here. And, you know, despite all the skill that Alphari has in that top lane, if you are a Malphite, you usually can keep yourself pretty safe.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult to get any early aggression going onto a Malphite. But ladies and gentlemen, we are heading onto Summoner's Rift for our second game of the day and second game of the playoffs here. It's Infused up against Exertus Esports this time. Exertus taking the blue side, but Infused with already a win on the board. Are they going to be able to push this into a 2-0 victory, or are Exertus going to be able to claw their way back in? There's only one way to find out. Here we are on Summoner's Rift. Exertus on the blue side. We will just quickly swap around that overlay for you guys. Well, we are going to see already Exertus going for this early invade once again. We saw this in the first game just to go and get that lane swap ward. Do you think that Exertus will be looking to go for a lane swap again?
It is something that's definitely on the cards. It depends how much they fear Alphari in a 1v1 versus Brandon and how much they want to try and shut down this Hecarim. They're going for the very deep wards once again. Alphari should see that one come down. Ping's already there. So with these deep wards coming out, you're expecting again that they are trying to look as to which lanes their counterparts are going to be in. And actually, very interesting move by Alphari. He actually backed pretty quickly there and is not going to pass over that ward. So he's now going to head down towards the mid lane. So he's not going to get behind like he did previously.
Yeah, so one thing I'm interested in for this game, I mean, aside from whether or not we do see the lane swap coming out, is the mid lane matchup is pretty different in this one because I mean I feel like Xerath has a whole lot more lane pressure than a Veigar does.
Yeah, so you can very easily put pressure onto an Echo as a Xerath. The only issue is you have less fail-safes as well. If you get caught out and miss your shocking orb, then you're a sitting duck for an Echo. He will be able to just have his way with that arcane beast in that mid lane. And you know, Alchemist is going to have a bit of a tough job here. He's probably going to use that Eye of the Storm as much as physically possible, just to put as much pressure onto this melee mid laner as he can, because that is where he will shine. If he can get Charlie T low enough that Charlie T is scared about making the engages, then that's only beneficial for Alchemist. And you already are seeing WizardU potentially looking for an early gank here.
He certainly is. Wiz going to be strolling into this lane. Charlie T already using his dash, flashes away, and is going to be able to dodge the binding narrowly. Charlie T, I thought he was actually going to base that.
I mean, that is classic Wiz right there. He holds off on the binding until the last moment, forcing the mid laner to make the flash. It's uncharacteristic of WizardU to miss there, because I imagine in most situations, WizardU would have hit that right on the head. And Infused do have the jump here on the bot lane turret. They're going for a very early push.
Yeah, so similar style to last game. We are going to see the 4-man pushes, but because of the gank that came out early, that has delayed this push coming out from Exertus. So they are going to be a little bit slower to start this off up in the top side of the map. And with the teleport available to Alphari, do you think there's any way that they'll be able to react to this? Or?
They're not going to save this tower for sure. I mean, Alphari jumping in, and you can see here Infused again doing their best job to try and keep the wave in their favor. I think because of the pressure that Exertus are going to be under, because they know they're behind, they may have a little bit more difficulty trying to completely reset the wave here. Alchemist just trying his best to put pressure onto Charlie T here.
Yeah, Thunderlord's Decree really coming into play here. We've seen multiple times already. Alchemist is able to auto-attack Arcano Pulse auto-attack, and then he gets the Thunderlord's Decree proc as well for that extra bit of harass in that lane. Obviously, one of those new Keystone Masteries down in, I believe, the Cunning Tree. So able to make good use of that one so far. But across the board, we are going to see the 1-1 tower start once again. Actually, the tower hasn't quite gone down for Exertus just yet. So kind of starting off the back foot here.
Yeah, and actually it's going to be very difficult for Brandon to push this against Poyok now. I mean, this potentially could be a slight misplay unless they wanted to keep that tower alive for some unbeknownst reason. they are going to, unless they re-swap and apply more pressure to that top lane, that's going to be staying static and healthy. They're not going to be able to get that anytime soon. So Infused have the slight lead here. And actually, the way this is working, they're forced in Brandon way off the tower, and that's just because he can't really see where Maxlaw is, and they don't have complete vision of Alfari. He's really scared to go into that tower range again as the AD carry from Infused pushes up, because he doesn't want to get caught out by another 4-man tower there.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan jumping forward just to try and clear the minion waves, but takes a huge chunk of damage from Poilk there. Brandon as well. They're just going to be walking forwards to try and deny this push as much as they can, but Maxlaw and Alfari doing the duo down in the bottom lane. But it's going to be Sir Scott and Wiz starting to try and put pressure onto this tower.
Interestingly enough, you're already seeing around a 15 CS gap open up between Brandon and Alfari, which is, I find, quite intriguing. I felt like Alfari had more time in that bot lane to get the farm under his belt.
Speaking of, Alfari has been locked up. A beautiful binding followed by Flame Choppers. This is going to be a large chunk of damage. And actually, the Mounting Dread not even going to proc onto Sir Scott, so not really anything that they can trade back.
Yeah, and I think it's just because Brandon had a huge wave pushed into his tower and then had the support from Dan to allow him to farm. Unfortunately, Alfari, because of the way that Jinx works with that fish bones, he was getting pushed off that wave, and actually, you know, as Malphite as a champion will remain fairly tanky even in the early portions of the game because of his passive. That pony, he's still in the Shetland version. He's not quite up to the stallion point in this point in time, and you can easily pressure an early level Hecarim because he's still pretty squishy as a champion. But the real key thing here is that top lane tower not going down for Exertus, and they're now allowing their top lane outer tower also to go down to Infuse. So there's going to be a huge tower advantage opening up here for the Infuse lineup.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like with this many people down in the bottom lane, they should be able to finish off this tower. Dragon definitely could be something that's on the cards for Exertus with how many people they've already committed to this bottom side of the map. Do you think that's something we could see coming out here?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they want to get the early dragon taken away from them again. They were in prime position to take the first dragon of the game last time round, but somehow forewent that, and then they gave it over to Infused, which that first dragon is still incredibly important in this very quick scaling version of the game that we see in this form of League of Legends. So they have to be more and more careful about giving away things like that and not able to recuperate it for themselves. It doesn't look like that's even going to be the case, and it looks like Infused are going to try and take the advantage as Exertus are going to switch their lineup to the top. And this is going to give a huge opportunity for Infused to at least gain control of that area of the map. You can see their pink wards have already crept into the red side jungle of Exertus. They are looking to get vision control around the map, and you can see RNG has favored Maxlaw because the Rift Scuttler on the dragon side of the map has given him his second or first stack of the game, I believe. So he's going to be in a position where he's going to start stacking up that Kindred passive very quickly.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're yet to see a Rift Herald in the playoffs. Didn't see either team going for that early on in the game last time. And with the AD carries heading up towards the top lane, potentially that is an objective we could see coming onto the board. But the split push Alfari is coming into play once more. He's managed to close that CS gap and actually pull ahead of Brandon now. So he's going to be feeling very comfortable on that Hecarim. Yeah. But let's take another look at the jungle Maxlaw. This time he's ahead of Dan by just under 10 CS.
And this is good for a Kindred because the more and more CS you get, the better it is for you to ramp up. And Kindred is one of these champions that really does well with high gold values because she is like an extra carry.
Arfan, though, has been caught out. The damage is coming through. Thick Skin is going to keep him alive for a little while as Dan has to flash away. The teleport is going to be channeled by Brandon. He's looking for the engage, but he's not level 6, so there's basically nothing he can do. And that is just going to be a situation diffused by the Thick Skin of Tom Kent.
She was about 2 waves away from 6 there. Had he been 6, that would have been a huge opportunity for Exertus to get a massive team fight in the early portion of the game. Alchemist going wild with Arcano Pulse there. Doesn't manage to hit his target or the CS. I'm not really sure where he was aiming, but maybe it was just for swag points.
Yeah, well, that is something that these players are playing for, along with, you know, victories and money and trophies and things.
Are they playing for swag points? Is that something that
I'm pretty sure. Well, like the UK version of man points. I don't know, but Charlie T, nice little sidestep there. Dan not quite going to be able to land that elastic slingshot. And we've seen, I mean, last game as well, Charlie T was able to dodge those. Well, Maxlaw has been caught up by the Flame Chomper. Zap going to go out, but again, not really any follow-up to these catches that Wiz and Sir Scott are managing to make.
Yeah, and actually this is a difficult situation because Wiz is only level 4 at this point in time. Arfan level 6, so the roaming that Wiz was doing to put down pressure on the map and try and put vision down for his team has left him with a serious XP disadvantage compared to Arfan. You know, the level 6 ultimate from Arfan is not necessarily the most useful thing in the game right now. I mean, it allows a good transition across the map, but you very rarely see it used like a full-on engage because it is quite a slow and well-telegraphed ability. It is more just able to get yourself back to lane a little bit quicker and allow you to rotate around the map as much as possible. So that's not a huge power spike in terms of ability to skirmish, but it is just a level advantage, and level brings things like base stat increases, which are always very useful.
Yeah, absolutely. Take a look at the CS lead starting to be built up in this mid lane by Charlie T here. He is forcing me to eat my words about Xerath's lane presence right now because he is almost 20 CS up on TX Alchemist, who honestly, across these 2 games, hasn't been faring all that well during the lane phase.
No, he's really struggled versus Charlie T, and on a champion he has been classically so renowned for, he's struggling against a champion that Charlie T has broken onto the UK scene with, and Echo has the ability to go toe-to-toe with these champions very effectively, especially low mobility champions like Xerath. And like I said, if Xerath wasn't landing those shocking orbs and getting the stun, he was just a sitting duck for Charlie T. Now, we've seen Alchemist play his very classic style of I will sit very far under my tower, I will farm the minion wave as they come towards me, and that's all you'll see me do.
Oh, Maxlaw taking a chunk of damage there. Dan just going to leap back to safety. Maxlaw actually taking 2/3 of his HP just from one combo from Alchemist there. Arfan did have to flash as well to pull himself to safety. So, I mean, across the board right now, let's take a look. I mean, CS numbers in general and the gold as well, despite very little action happening, Infused are starting to take lead, which everyone was praising Exertus on their early game macro play. So far, Infused are kind of just running rings around them.
They've got a pretty significant lead already, and that is in no part due to that very early tower that Exertus failed to take because they were slow off the beat. They were very slow to get towards that tower. They didn't have the time, and a good rotation from Infused meant they managed to save it, which, you know, you may think that one tower is pretty insignificant, but it's a pretty healthy chunk of gold for your team, and that sometimes just provides that slight edge that you need to have the item spikes, and you need to have just those slight power advantages over your opposing lane member. And you're seeing Brandon is so scared of Alfari. He does not want to get near to him in this lane, and he's just forcing himself to stay very far under turret. He's gone incredibly defensive with his build, the Ninja Tabai already, and also the Giant's Belt. So nothing fancy coming out from Brandon. Alfari and Maxlaw, they're going to try and put pressure here. Brandon probably won't have the wave clear to deal with this.
No, absolutely not. He is pretty tanky, so can just walk forwards and try and deny it. But if he goes for that ground slam, might be engaged upon. That is going to be Sir Scott finally taking that tower away up in the top lane. And Brandon is eventually going to be able to deny the push, but that's half HP now on that bottom lane tier 2.
And obviously they do not regenerate health, so that is just a bit of a war of attrition being played by Infused, knowing that they get the damage down now, they'll have less damage to deal with later. Interestingly enough, obviously, Poilk, once he gets to a position of more items behind him, he should be able to get that down with just one explosive shot, full combos. So, you know, there is always the late game plays here. You know, you set that down to explosive shot to go down pretty quickly. That could be a tower dive for Infused. That could be a game-changing area of the map. It could lead to their victory. You know, they could storm through that bottom lane. These kind of things may not seem big when they happen, but could have a very influential impact later on in the game.
Yeah, interestingly, Skirmish's Saber picked up here by Maxlaw, so obviously wanting to start to be a little bit more aggressive. The disrespect coming out from Coil doesn't even stop auto-attacking the tower when Dan tries to engage on him. Arfan going to be able to pull him away, but the binding lands, and that's going to be the right to the arcade coming through from Alchemist. What a combo coming out from Exertus.
Right at the last moment, that Dark Binding managing to pick out Poilk, and that was
He got out the wrong side of the frog.
He got out the wrong side of the frog. Gentlemen never step out the back side of the frog. It'll always land in dark areas of the map. And that is a decent pickup because they should be able to get a lot of damage onto this mid lane tower. There's not a lot here to stop and try and wave clear. And Maxlaw, the only only champion able to do any form of damage to the minion waves, as Arfan unfortunately having to step back.
Yeah, so that is a fantastic spike in gold for Exertus. They have now closed that gold gap to just under 1,000 now. And, I mean, interestingly as well, AD Carry's changing up the builds on this one. We saw last game Tristana was first item rapid fire cannon, this time opting to go for the Infinity Edge first. And do you think that's potentially due to the more macro-focused style in this game?
They aren't looking to group very early. You're seeing the way that these teams are playing. They're just spreading their forces as thin as possible. They're looking to get as much farm in and try and motor it towards a later stage of the game. The rapid fire cannon on Tristana would have been better for mid-game skirmishes and mid-game fights because it provides you with that power spike. Jinx with Infinity Edge is always a power spike just because of the way her Fishbones and Pow work. They just, because they have that scaling damage and scaling attack speed, Infinity Edge is always going to be a power spike. But this time round, Poylt going for the Infinity Edge. You got to remember that these AD carries have switched round as well. So you're going to see Sir Scott on Jinx. He may have a different build pattern in his mind for Jinx, which is going to be more effective. And Poylt may think that going Infinity Edge first on Tristana is more effective than going that rapid fire cannon. Again, a lot of it is just down to how you feel. Oh wow!
Maxlaw already having to flash out of this one. Right at the arcane, going to land 2 procs as Dan trying to finish off the AD carry jungle combo. Alfari, though, has been caught up. The shocking orb is there, but Arfan is going to be able to pull that pony to safety. Or is he? Brandon flashes forward to finish him off, and now Arfan is trying to swim away, but the River King cannot find the river right now. He's going to be gobbled alive, and that is going to be going over to DX Alchemist. He picks up his first kill of the game.
And the teleport coming through from Brandon here should secure this top lane tower. This is the kind of game that Exertus wanted to play. They're not going for full-on 5v5 teamfights. They are looking for picks. And the cross-map ultimates from DX Alchemist are providing huge amounts of pressure when WYZIU is managing to rotate. They're working well with Brandon. You saw there you didn't need to go for a huge Malphite ultimate. He saved it until the very last moment to be able to pick off Alfari. And this is the way that Exertus need to play their composition. This is the way that we've seen Exertus play in the past. They love to go for the picks. They have good rotations from that. The macro play is there for them. They know, WYZIU is calling this. You got to imagine WYZIU is probably saying, guys, bot, pick off Alfari. We can get a good pick. We can use Dan to start the engage. I'll follow up with a Dark Binding, and then we always have that unstoppable force in the backline. And actually, Maxlaw is not in a good position to deal with it.
The flash lets bounce coming out from Dan. Maxlaw in a little bit of trouble. The Rift Peril going to join the fray as well, but Maxlaw going to find his way to safety. Dan tanking up a lot of damage there, but all in all, both of them escaping.
I got to say, very optimistic flash from Dan to expect to be able to 100-0 Maxlaw as a full tank. Zach?
I think he was expecting Brandon to come down, but the unstoppable force was pulled out. So.
Yeah, I mean, you got to remember that the communication there. Brandon didn't have an unstoppable force. He wasn't going to be able to get right into the fray. Dan maybe just mistiming things a little bit, expecting to be able to keep Maxlaw occupied for longer than he did. The thing I like about this also is that because Exertus are taking advantage of the fact that Infused aren't grouping, they're not keeping Charlie T with a team. So Exertus can just look for these engages because there's nothing really to stop them at this point in time. You don't have anything that's dissuading the Exertus guy, the Infused guys. Oh, sorry, I am right. The original time is dissuading the Exertus guys for going for these engages. Echo was the sole reason that Infused managed to deal with the huge Zac engage and the huge range CC that he put down, because he could just throw that parallel convergence down and provide a team-wide CC. And Brandon, now the target of mounting Dread, won't quite proc here, but they are very keen to get this second-tier turret down in the top lane.
Yeah, well, we can see now DX Alchemist, he's been visiting the library. He's found himself 2 different books. He's got the Morello, and he's gone for the Medjai Soul Stealer, so he does not intend on dying anytime soon, but we'll have to see if this is one that's going to bite him in the bottom. Now, I mean, it was changed slightly, so it's not quite as punishing if you die, but it's still a very risky item to build.
Oh yeah, for sure. Definitely a very risky item to build. And Alchemist was pretty well known for building it consistently on Lux and Xerath because he just stayed so far into the backline that even when teamfights were going on, you'd feel like he was half a map away, because that's the kind of style of game that Alchemist likes to play. And I feel like on Xerath he is far safer and in far better position to do that because of the range of the Xerath abilities. You can see he is so far back. Charlie T going so aggressive though.
Beautiful shocking off. There's the binding as well. Look at the damage coming down, but Wiz mounting Dread is stacking on up. But all in all, we do see Alfari able to finish off that tower. So despite the sort of half engage coming out from Exertus, they can't defend that objective.
And despite some fantastic macro and macro plays and rotations from Exertus, you're seeing it's so difficult for them to push out of their side of the map. And we do have a pause coming through. But you're seeing it that they are unable to deal with the pressure coming down to their turrets. They haven't got great wave clear apart from Jinx with Fishbones and Alchemist. But Alchemist and Jinx can only be in 2 lanes at the very most. And even then, you really got to combine their wave clear to be able to deal with the waves coming towards them. And you see how aggressive Charlie T was in that second tier turret. They had to back off because without the combination of CC from Zach and Brandon, they are just not going to be able to deal with how aggressive Charlie T can be. And that's the thing that's been missing from the Infused skirmishes so far. It has been Charlie T. I imagine when they group up and Charlie T becomes more of an influential role in these skirmishes and team fights, you'll start to see Infused pull away with it.
I think this is the thing so far has been Infused have still been in charge of the game. They've been the ones sort of with the leash, and it's Exertus that are sort of padding along beside them. Across the board, despite these picks being grabbed or being picked by Exertus, they have managed to get themselves 3 kills. They're still 4,000 gold down. And if you take a look at the CS numbers, there is a 20 CS lead up in the top lane. There's a 40 CS lead in the jungle, a 35 CS lead in the mid lane, and another 15 CS lead in the bottom lane. And they're all in favor of Infused.
Yeah, and also you got to remember that it's so difficult, like I said, for Exertus to push out of their own side. They just can't deal with the pressure coming down onto their turrets from the Infused lineup. Yes, they're getting picks, yes, they're getting kills, but they're not doing anything with it. They're not able to capitalize on those picks that they're making because these picks are happening right near their second tier turrets when the waves are already there. You've got to remember that we're at 90 minutes in the game. Death timers have been increased this patch, but there's still not an extensive amount that taking kills near your base can result in you taking towers near their base. It's just not long enough right now. So they're getting picks, but they're not able to push as a team because there is a split push pressure coming out from from Infused. They are applying pressure in 3 different lanes at the same time, and it looks like Exertus are a bit unsure about what to do. They make the picks, and they have to go and deal with the push coming in the top lane. Like you saw, they got those 3 picks in the bot lane early on, and then they had to immediately teleport to the top lane just to deal with the fact that Charlie T had pushed into that second tier turret.
I mean, it's exactly what you were saying before. It is, for Exertus, it's going to be about these team fights. They have to try and find those scenarios for themselves. I mean, just look at the Wombo combo they have. They've got Malphite in the top lane. They've got Zac in the jungle. And then the AoE coming out from both Xerath and Jinx. And as well, Soul Shackles from Wiz. There is so much that they have in a team fight, if they can find it.
They can definitely win team fights, but they have to play them sensibly once again. And I think you have to be able to get pressure onto Charlie T. You leave Charlie T unchecked in a team fight, he will run away and just do nasty things to your backline. And to be completely honest, with Max Law in the fray as well, they've got 2 mechanisms with Kindred and Charlie T to be able to deal with this hard engage, looking to burst someone down very quickly. Once Brandon jumps in with the Unstoppable Force, once Dan jumps in with the Elastic Slingshot, if they don't get locked up by the parallel convergence, they sure as hell aren't going to get kills with the ultimate from Kindred. So there is a lot of sensible choices coming out from the Infused roster, and their composition is quite well placed to deal with team fights. And they're doing the right thing. They're applying pressure in lanes, and they're just delaying team fights for as long as possible. They know that the later this goes, they will still be able to compete with Exertus. They can compete with the fact that they've just got stronger solo lanes, they can split push more effectively, and even then when it comes to a team fight, if they've got the item thresholds behind them, like you can see in the mid lane for Charlie T, he's got Abyssal Scepter and Lichbane. Jinx will not survive very long if Charlie T is left unchecked.
Yeah, and now we see Infused starting to hover towards the Baron side of the map. I saw they all went to base, and immediately everybody on the Infused lineup grabs that pink ward.
Yeah.
And now they start to just control the vision and deny any vision Exertus can try and grab.
You can see on the Infused lineup, they got 4 blue wards. The blue wards are blue trinkets. They're so crazy. They have a huge range. They provide a permanent ward that, yes, it's one time. Oh, Max Law
is going on. Max Law is going to be able to get the Lamb's Respite down, but is it going to be able to save him? That's the question. The heal comes out. Yeah, but he gets doubled up. And Arfan is going to be able to pull him to safety right. The Arcane can't connect, and it's going to be Dan diving forward, but Cell Division won't be enough to keep him alive. Brandon trying to escape for this one. He's going to flash, but he's going to go down anyway. And as well, we see Dan going down. Alchemist trying to do what he can, but he's found himself between a rock and a hard place. Poil going to jump forwards, but he's actually under the tower, incredibly low there. But it is going to be a 3-0 for Infused.
And I'm pretty sure we have a replay for you, and it's definitely going to be coming up on your screen this time round. So we'll have a quick look here. Everything goes down onto Maxlaw. Lamb's Respite provides such a huge period of time where everything is being blown onto Maxlaw, and then Arfan comes through. At this point in time, Charlie T is already on the scene. He is left unchecked, like we said, and you will leave an Echo to do things. He will just run away with it. And I think the key for Exertus is, like I said, if you're not focusing Charlie T, you're not winning team fights. And you can see here it was basically almost a clean ace for Infused as they just managed to chase DX Alchemist off to the side here.
Yeah.
I mean, they went all in onto a Kindred. It's like going all in onto Arfan. You've got so much time and expenditure just to get through the kits that deal with burst in both of those champions that you leave the real targets completely unchecked. And you could see Poilk, he wasn't being focused. Charlie T managed to come into this team fight 5 seconds after it began and then absolutely storm through the lineup of Exertus. They're just not playing it the way they need to. They need to be very careful about where they select these engages. You just can't see someone in the jungle and say, hey, they're in my jungle, I'm going to go randomly engaged. That's just not how you're going to be Infused. You need to select your targets.
Yeah, and I think as well, it's key that with these kinds of ultimates, they have to be hitting multiple people. You can't afford to blow everything on just Maxlaw, especially when he has an ultimate that stops him dying.
Well, exactly. Brandon blew that Unstoppable Force, and it actually only hit Arfan because Maxlaw was inside Arfan. Maxlaw was he was in that stomach of the Toad at that point in time, so he was safe from that Unstoppable Force. And you know, you have very limited opportunity to make an engage from Exertus. Your skills are one-time use only, really, when you think about it. Elastic Slingshot will very rarely happen more than once in a team fight unless you're chasing stragglers. Unstoppable Force will only happen once in a team fight. If you choose to use those inappropriately, then you've gimped yourself coming into the later stages of that team fight. And you could see there, they blew everything onto Maxlaw, who didn't even die.
Yeah. I mean, that is the key thing. Maxlaw didn't go down, and that was just Infused able to then clean up when everything was on cooldown for Exertus. But not all hope is lost just yet. 8,000 gold lead in favor of Infused. They certainly have a large advantage. Alfari looking for the flank on that Hecarim is going to be spotted out by a ward. We'll be able to clear that and back away again. Exertus, for the first time, and it feels like quite a while, pushing up further up the mid lane, up towards the tier 1 towers, but they might just have to back away again because their vision is just not strong enough right now to dodge away from these flanks.
Yeah, I mean, all hope isn't lost for Exertus here because Scott has managed to pick up the rapid fire cannon. It's a pretty decent item on Jinx, you know, with the increased range from your fish bones added to the increased range of rapid fire cannon. You can be hitting people from quite a considerable distance away. Yeah. So, you know, they definitely have tools in their kit to bring themselves back into this. It's just whether they can be more effective about when they choose to engage. These 5v5 fights, I just don't see going in their favor easily.
Yeah, and one thing as well is Alchemist invested quite a lot of money into this Magi Soul Slayer. Oh, Dan is actually going to start the fight onto both, but it's going to be Sir Scott just obliterated there by Alfari. Alchemist is being chased down by the pony. He's going to drop. Wiz as well has to flash away as the double kill comes through for the horse. Wiz just trying to escape as the triple kill lands. Now Brandon is going to be the next target. He's the final member of Exertus alive. And actually, this might just be potential to end the game. They can at least get the hit, but look at the massive minion wave down in the bottom lane. Worst case scenario, they get 2 inhibitors here.
They can very easily look for the game end with the Tristana. They have the shield. Charlie T's going to...
They have 280 carries.
Yeah, exactly.
They can keep on pushing for this one. With the Tristana and the Kindred, they're going to be able to do damage onto this tower. They're going to get at least 1. I don't know if they have their tankiness, but the minions are arriving. People are respawning for Exertus. Maybe they need to force an engage on this one because look how much damage the minions are doing to this bottom lane tower. Dan's searching for something. They are going to decide to just go for the wave clear, though, in the end. And it is going to be Infused so close to closing out the game. Can't quite finish off that last tower, though.
We talked about Charlie T. We've barely touched an Alfari this entire game.
Yeah.
He's been silently farming the side lanes. He's picked up a Youmuu's Ghostblade Trinity Force and Hex Drinker, and suddenly this pony that I talked about at the start being the Shetland is gone full-blown stallion right here. And he is doing some serious DPS. Dan just trying to outsmite Maxwell there. Didn't happen, and
He's 2 levels down.
He's 2 levels down, yeah.
But Arfan can be locked up by a binding here, but they've been voted in. Sir Scott, beautiful Black Shield, will deny the stun from Parallel Convergence, but Wiz is going to sacrifice his own life for that. Thick Skin is not going to be enough, and neither is Jinx's health bar as he falls. Maxwell picking that one up. Brandon just trying to escape this one. He's all out of cooldowns, though. The Flash Juke is not going to be enough. Brandon is going to fall. Alchemist and Dan, the last 2 remaining members, but Alfari, he's not looking for the Nexus, he's looking for kills. Alchemist gonna flash away, but it is going to be the game. Infused taking this series 2-0 up against Exertus Esports.
Yeah, and fantastic play. There was, again, just too many threats to try and deal with from the Infused lineup. If you didn't focus down Charlie T, you know, Alfari was building up very slowly, and he could just storm into your backline. The thing about Infused, we always see them pick very hyper-mobile threats in the mid lane and top lane, so they'll always be able to try and dive past the CC being thrown out and the control being thrown out from the Exertus guys and deal with the back line. You know, once you dealt with Jinx in that lineup, there wasn't really that much threat for sustained damage in a team fight, because the only things that Xerath offers is he pokes, and then he has basically a 1-round burst, and then it has to be static to pick off stragglers or try and get an execution. Once you take out Jinx, there's not really much left in terms of damage from the Exertus lineup, and they had 2 champions that very, very easily could dive onto the back line and just annihilate Jinx. And because they gave away Tahm Kench, there was nothing stopping Jinx getting deleted. You know, there was no fail-safe for Jinx. No Lulu, no Soraka, no Tahm Kench, and then you're going up against Neko and Hecarim, who are just going to destroy that AD carry.
Alfari literally trampled both of the squishies in that last team fight, just strolled on through them. But it is going to be the series going over 2-0 to Infuse. Phenomenal play from them, and they're able to take it. First game in 25 minutes, second game in 27 minutes. Definitely commanding victories for them. I mean, Exertus, they made it into the top 4. They made it into the semi-finals. They've guaranteed themselves 3rd/4th place. So definitely not something that they'll be upset with. Definitely still an achievement to be proud of. But I mean, Infused, they're definitely still looking like favorites for me for the final.
Oh yeah, they look super, super strong. And you know, we talked about the way Exertus could potentially make their way into this series. Most people did believe that Infused would go 2-0. I believe Infused would go 2-0. I believe both our analysts believe Infused might go 2-0. So I believe we have something exciting coming up.
We do indeed. Lube from Obamacare is waiting, standing by with one of the players from Infused. Let's have a chat with the winners and see how they're feeling after that victory.